Avast ahoy and welcome to our radio drama presentation of Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl. Please note that this is a live performance and the cast has had no rehearsals together, so there may be occasional stumbles in the dialogue. We're expecting to have a lot of fun and hope you will too. And now, please enjoy Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl. What in blazes are you doing down here in the hull, you scabrous dogs? Gambling again? And without your captain? Well, I suppose I can understand why you wouldn't want to bet against me after last time. You know, if you've had enough liar's dice for one day, I heard an interesting story recently. A tale about a particular pirate captain. So sit back and let me regale you for a little while. A grey wall of fog hangs over the Caribbean Sea. The waves are calm as a massive ship sails quietly through the water. Aboard it, a young girl stands at the bow rail.
Yo ho, a pirate's life for me. We pillage, we plunder, we rifle and loot. Drink up, me hearties, yo-ho. We kidnap and ravage and don't give a hoot. Drink up, me hearties, yo-ho. Yo-ho, a pirate's life for me. We extort, we pilfer, we filch and sack. Drink up.
She's startled when a hand clutches her shoulder.
Quiet, missy. Cursed pirates sail these waters. You don't want to bring them down on us now, do you?
Mr. Gibbs, that will do.
A dashing young man, Royal Navy to the core, glances at Gibbs. Beside him is a man of obvious high station.
You singing about pirates? Bad luck to be singing about pirates with us mired in this unnatural fog, mark my words.
Consider them marked. On your way.
Aye, Lieutenant. Bad luck to have a woman on board, too. Even a miniature one.
I think it'd be rather exciting to meet a pirate.
Think again, Miss Swann. Vile and dissolute creatures, the lot of them. I intend to see to it that any man who sails under a pirate flag, or wears a pirate brand, gets what he deserves. A short drop and a sudden stop.
Elizabeth furrows her brow and turns to Gibbs, who helpfully mimes a man being hung.
Lieutenant Norrington, I don't know where I was going with that. I appreciate your fervor, but I'm concerned about the effect this subject will have upon my daughter.
My apologies, Governor Swann.
Actually, I find it all fascinating.
Yes, that's what concerns me.
The lieutenant and governor walk off, leaving Elizabeth, who looks out to sea again. Out to the fog floats a parasol, followed by a young, unconscious boy floating on driftwood.
Look, a boy! There's a boy in the water!
Man overboard! Man the ropes! Fetch a hook! Haul him aboard!
Sailors scramble to hold the boy aboard and lay him on the deck.
He's still breathing.
Gibbs looks out from the side of the ship, his mouth agape.
Mary, Mother of God.
Everyone's attention moves from the boy to the sea, which is no longer empty. A flaming wreckage litters the water. What remains of the hull burns, and a ragged British flag floats in the water.
Well, what happened here?
It's most likely the powder magazine. Merchant vessels run heavily armed.
What a good it did them. Everyone's thinking it. I'm just saying it. Pirates!
There's no proof of that. It was probably an accident.
Rouse the captain immediately. Heave to and take in sail. Launch the boats.
Elizabeth, I want you to accompany the boy. He'll be in your charge. Take care of him.
Minutes later, a dinghy rows its way toward the wreckage. On the larger ship, the boy lays motionless, Elizabeth beside him. She gently brushes his hair away from his eyes and he startles awake.
It's okay. My name's Elizabeth Swann.
Will Turner.
I'm watching over you, Will.
As he slips back into unconsciousness, Elizabeth spies a chain around his neck. She tugs it free and finds a gold medallion with a skull hanging on it.
You're a pirate.
Has he said anything?
Elizabeth turns to see Norrington behind her and hides the medallion behind her back.
His name's William Turner. That's all I found out.
Norrington nods to his crew.
Take him below.
Norrington's men take Will, and Elizabeth steals away to the stern of the ship to examine her prize. She holds the medallion up and inspects it, and something in the distance catches her attention. Moving through the fog, silent as a ghost, is a ship with black sails. A flag flies from mizzentop, a Jolly Roger. Elizabeth shuts her eyes tight and then opens them again. But 'tis no longer 12-year-old Elizabeth at sea. 'Tis 20-year-old Elizabeth, in bed, alone. She sits up and moves to her dressing table where she pulls out the medallion. She stares at it a moment before putting it on and looking at herself in the mirror.
Elizabeth, are you all right?
Elizabeth dashes to her bed, throws on a dressing gown, and slips the medallion under her nightdress.
Are you decent?
Yes, yes.
Her father enters the room with 2 maids.
Ah, still abed at this hour. It's a beautiful day. I have a gift for you.
One of the maids pulls back the heavy curtains and opens the window to reveal the bustling town of Port Royal, with Fort Charles in the distance. The other maid hands the governor a box which he opens to reveal a luxurious dress.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Isn't it?
May I inquire as to the occasion?
An occasion to dote upon his daughter.
Elizabeth smiles and goes with the maids behind the dressing screen.
Actually, I had hoped you might wear it to the ceremony today.
Ceremony?
Captain Norrington's promotion ceremony.
I knew it.
Commodore Norrington. He's about to become, a fine gentleman, don't you think? He fancies you, you know.
The maids are tying the corset a wee bit tight.
Elizabeth, how's it coming?
It's difficult to say.
I'm told it's the latest fashion in London.
Well, women in London must have learned not to breathe.
The maids finish restricting Elizabeth as a butler walks into the room. "My lord, you have a visitor." The Koehler, dressed in rough clothing, stands in the mansion's entry hall with a long box.
Turner, it's so good to see you again.
Good day, sir. I have your order.
Will puts the case on the table and opens it. Inside is a masterfully crafted sword and scabbard. He hands it to Swann, who draws the sword and inspects it.
The blade is folded steel. That's gold filigree laid into the handle. If I may.
The governor hands the sword over, and Will balances it on one finger where the blade meets the guard.
Perfectly balanced. The tang is nearly the full width of the blade.
With practiced ease, Will flips the sword, catches it by his hilt, and offers it back with a bow.
It's very impressive. Ah, now, Commodore Norrington is going to be very pleased with this.
Swann sheathes the sword and hands it to Will.
Do pass my compliments on to your master.
Will forces a smile. His master obviously didn't make the sword.
I shall. A craftsman is always pleased to hear his work is appreciated.
Footsteps are heard, and the 2 turn to see Elizabeth descending the stairs. The dress may be painful, but she wears it well.
Elizabeth. Ooh, you look absolutely stunning.
Will, so good to see you. I had a dream about you last night.
About me?
Elizabeth, is that entirely proper for you to...
About the day we met. Do you remember?
How could I forget, Miss Swann?
Will, how many times must I ask you to call me Elizabeth?
At least once more, Miss Swann, as always.
There, see? At least the boy has a sense of propriety. Now we really must get going.
Good day, Mr. Turner.
Good day.
He waits until the Swans are in their carriage.
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth looks at Will as they ride off. Meanwhile, at the Port Royal harbour, A mast comes into view, and standing atop the yard arm is a confident-looking swashbuckler. His dramatic gazing at the town is interrupted when he realizes his small fishing dory is taking on water. He leaps down to the deck and begins bailing, and as he does, the boat slips past the skeletal remains of 3 pirates hanging from a rocky promontory. The 4th, unoccupied noose bears a sign saying, "Pirates, ye be warned." The man stands up straight and removes his tricorn, paying a moment of respect. The docks bustle with activity, but several deckhands turn just in time to see the swashbuckler standing majestically atop a rapidly sinking crow's nest. He steps nonchalantly onto the dock and strolls past the harbormaster as the last of his vessel sinks into the depths.
There you. It's a shilling to tie up your boat at the dock.
The man casts a dubious glance backward toward the small bit of mast poking out of the water.
And I shall need to know your name.
What do you say to 3 shillings and we forget the name?
He tosses 3 coins. He tosses 3 coins into the harbormaster's ledger. The official considers, then closes the book.
Welcome to Port Royal, Mr. Smith.
The harbormaster walks off, and the swashbuckler walks past the harbormaster's desk, plucks a small bag of coins sitting on it, and then walks off. He looks across the bay of Port Royal to a large naval ship tied to a dock. Over at Fort Charles, British soldiers march into the courtyard, taking their places for Norrington's ceremony.
2 paces, march! About face! Present arms!
Norrington walks through the columns of soldiers toward the presentation area where Governor Swann waits for him. Swann presents the sword to Norrington, who accepts and does a flourishing salute, first to the governor, then to the officers, and then to the audience assembled beneath the glaring sun. Among the audience is Elizabeth, who is desperately trying to hide the discomfort of her dress. Meanwhile, the swashbuckler makes his way down to the dock, passing 2 Marines on sentry duty.
This dock is off-limit to civilians.
I'm terribly sorry, I didn't know. If I see one, I shall inform you immediately.
He tries to move around the soldiers, but they block his path.
Apparently there's some sort of high tone and fancy up to do at the fort, eh? How could it be that 2 upstanding gentlemen such as yourselves do not merit an invitation?
Someone has to make sure this dock stays off-limits to civilians.
It's a fine goal, to be sure, but it seems to me that a ship like that
He points to the largest vessel in the harbour.
makes this one here a bit superfluous, really.
Oh, the Dauntless is the power in these waters, true enough, but there's no ship that can match the Interceptor for speed.
I've heard of one. Supposed to be very fast, nigh uncatchable. The Black Pearl.
Well, there's no real ship as can match the Interceptor.
The Black Pearl is a real ship.
No, it's not, Murtogg.
Yes, it is, Mullroy. I've seen it.
You've seen it?
Yes.
You haven't seen it.
Yes, I have.
You've seen a ship with black sails that's crewed by the damned and captained by a man so evil that hell itself spat him back out.
No.
No.
But I have seen a ship with black sails.
Oh, and no ship that's not crewed by the damned and contained by a man so evil that hell itself spat him back out could possibly have black sails. Therefore, couldn't possibly be any other ship than the Black Pearl. Is that what you're saying?
No.
Like I said, there's no real ship as can match the interest. Hey!
But the swashbuckler is not there. He's now standing casually at the wheel of the Interceptor.
You! Get away from there! You don't have permission to be aboard there, mate.
The trespasser looks over with exaggerated innocence as the sailors board the ship and level their guns at him.
I'm sorry, it's such a pretty boat. Ship.
What's your name?
Smith. Or Smithy, if you like.
What's your business in Port Royal, Mr. Smith?
Yeah, and no lies.
Well then, I confess. It is my intention to commandeer one of these ships, pick up a crew at Tortuga, raid, pillage, and plunder, and otherwise pilfer my Weasley black guts out.
I said no lies.
I think he's telling the truth.
If he were telling the truth, he wouldn't have told us.
Unless, of course, I knew you wouldn't believe the truth even if he told it to you.
Murtogg and Mullroy consider the point. Back at the fort, the ceremony's reception has begun. Elizabeth, pale and perspiring, fans herself as Norrington approaches her.
May I have a moment?
The two walk away from the party toward a parapet.
You look lovely, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth manages a nod and a gasp of acknowledgement as she puts a hand to her corset.
I apologize if I seem forward, but I must speak my mind. This promotion throws into sharp relief that which I have not yet achieved. A marriage to a fine woman. You have become a fine woman, Elizabeth.
I can't breathe.
Yes, I'm a bit nervous myself.
Elizabeth faints, falling over the parapet short wall and plummeting down, down, down to the water below. At the docks, the swashbuckler is regaling the sentries.
And then they made me their chief.
The three men react to the sound of Elizabeth hitting the water. Atop the fort, Norrington turns to find he's alone.
Elizabeth?
He looks down and sees the white water of her splash.
Elizabeth!
He takes off his dress coat and prepares to dive, but the lieutenant comes running and grabs his arm.
The rocks. Sir, it's a miracle she missed them.
Realizing the man is right, Norrington turns and runs. Underwater, an unconscious Elizabeth continues to sink. Above, the scallywag and the sentries are still startled by the splash.
Will you be saving her then?
I can swim.
The other sentry shakes his head.
Only dog paddle.
Prides of the King's Navy, you are.
He removes his hat and coat, pistol and sword belt, and shoves them into the sentry's arms.
Do not lose these.
He dives off the ship. Underwater, the medallion slips loose from Elizabeth's bodice. The gold coin turns slowly until the skull glints against the sunlight shining through the water. Suddenly, a ripple bursts forth from the coin and shoots out across the sea. Aboard the interceptor, the sentries turn to each other.
What was that?
The other shakes his head, and they both grab their tricorns as a gust of wind flares up, and the ship's flags begin blowing in the opposite direction. Underwater, Elizabeth's unmoving form hits the bottom, but a moment later the swashbuckler grabs her and drags her to the surface. He attempts to swim, but struggles due to the heavy dress. He dives, tears off the gaudy garment, and lets it sink as he continues to the shore. At the cliffside, Norrington rushes down, followed by his men as fog begins gathering on the sea. At the dock, sentries help the swashbuckler haul Elizabeth out to the water.
I got it. Not breathing.
The swashbuckler grabs a knife from the sentry's belt.
Move!
He pushes past the sentry, slits the corset down the middle, yanks it away, and tosses it to the other guard. A moment later, Elizabeth startles awake, coughing up water.
I never would have thought of that.
Clearly, you've never been to Singapore.
The man spots the medallion and picks it up.
Where did you get that?
Before she can answer, Norrington's blade is at the man's throat.
On your feet.
He stands as Governor Swann races up to them.
Oh, Elizabeth, are you all right?
Yes, I'm fine.
Swann notices the corset the sentry is holding. The guard quickly points to the swashbuckler.
Him!
Father! Commodore, do you really intend to kill my rescuer?
Norrington looks at Elizabeth, then nods to his men. The swashbuckler nods a thanks as the Commodore sheathes his sword and extends his hand.
I believe thanks are in order.
The man takes Norrington's hand gingerly, but the moment they touch, the Commodore yanks the rescuer's arm toward him, tears back the sleeve of his shirt, and exposes a brand on his wrist. A large letter P.
Had a brush with the East India Trading Company, did we?
The
Pirate?
exposed pirate grimaces.
Him.
Keep your guns on him, men. Gillette, fetch some irons.
Norrington notices something else. Above the P brand is a tattoo, a small bird in flight across water.
Well, well. Jack Sparrow, isn't it?
Captain Jack Sparrow, if you please, sir.
Well, I don't see your ship, Captain.
I'm in the market, as it were.
He said he'd come to commandeer one.
I told you he was telling the truth. These are his, sir.
Mullroy hands over Jack's pistol and belt. Norrington checks the pistol.
No additional shot nor powder.
Jack shrugs. Norrington pulls a compass from the belt and examines it.
A compass that doesn't point north.
The Commodore next draws the sword a few inches from its scabbard.
And I half expected it to be made out of wood. You are, without a doubt, the worst pirate I've ever heard of.
But you have heard of me.
Norrington grabs Jack by the arm and drags him over to Gillette, who is returned with shackles.
Commodore, I really must protest.
Carefully, Lieutenant.
Pirate or not, this man saved my life.
One good deed is not enough to redeem a man of a lifetime of wickedness.
Though it seems enough to condemn him.
Indeed.
Gillette finishes chaining Jack, then steps away.
Finally.
Lightning quick, Jack has the manacle chain wrapped around Elizabeth's throat. Guns are drawn again.
Oh, goodness. No, don't shoot!
I knew you'd warm up to me. Commodore Norrington, my effects, please. And my hat.
Norrington scowls.
Commodore?
Norrington takes them from the sentry and hands them out to Jack.
Elizabeth. It is Elizabeth, isn't it?
It's Miss Swann.
Miss Swann, if you'd be so kind. Come, dear, we don't have all day.
She takes his belongings from Norrington, but Jack quickly takes the pistol from her and turns it around so she's facing him, barrel at her head.
Now, if you'll be very kind.
She puts the hat and belt on him.
Easy on the goods, darling.
You're despicable.
Sticks and stones, love. I saved your life, you saved mine. We're square.
Done. He turns her again and then backs away slowly.
Gentlemen, m'lady, you will always remember this as the day you almost caught Captain Jack Sparrow.
He shoves Elizabeth away, grabs a rope, and kicks free a belaying pin. A counterweight drops and Jack is lifted up to a gantry where he grabs a second rope and swings around.
You shoot him!
Open fire!
Muskets fire and miss.
On his heels!
Navy men race after him. Jack swings out onto a yardarm, spots a rope leading down, snaps the manacle's chain over the rope and zip lines to the dock. He runs across the bridge, dodging bullets, and disappears as he runs into the town.
Gillette, Mr. Sparrow has a dawn appointment with the gallows. I would hate for him to miss it.
Gillette nods to the other soldiers and heads off. The fog casts an eerie twilight pall on Port Royal, as armed parties of soldiers search the streets. After a squad passes by, Jack steps out from his hiding place behind a blacksmith statue and slips into a forge. Inside, he finds dozens of swords in various states of production. Seeing nobody around, he takes off his hat, finds a sledge, and is about to break his manacles when a bottle hits the ground. Jack turns to see a blacksmith sleeping in a chair in the corner of the room. Jack gives the man a hard poke to make sure he's indeed passed out. When the man merely snores in response, Jack turns away, then doubles back and screams in the man's face just to be sure.
Whoa!
Another snort is all he gets for his trouble. Jack quickly moves to the anvil and brings the sledge down on the manacle links, but they don't break. He looks around and spots the gears of a mill, and below it a small donkey harnessed to the machine. Jack pulls the tool from the fireplace, taps the donkey with it, and the animal begins to move, and with it the gears of the mill. Jack puts the links of the manacles between the gears, and as they come together, the link snaps. Suddenly, the door to the forge opens. Jack dives for cover just before Will enters and notices the mill moving. He stops the donkey and looks around, spotting only the drunken man in the corner.
Right where I left you.
He takes off his coat and sees the sledge resting atop the anvil.
Not where I left you.
He moves casually toward the sledge, then spots Jack's hat. He reaches for it, but a flat of a blade slaps his hand. Jack stands nearby, sword leveled at Will.
You're the one they're hunting. The pirate.
You seem somewhat familiar. Have I threatened you before?
I make a point of avoiding familiarity with pirates.
Ah, well then, it would be a shame to put a black mark on your record, so if you'll excuse me.
As Jack turns to go, Will grabs a sword from a nearby honing guide and points it at the intruder.
Do you think this wise, boy? Crossing blades with a pirate?
You threatened Miss Swann.
Only a little.
Jack strikes. The two men trade feints, thrusts, and parries with lightning speed.
You know what you're doing, I'll give you that. Excellent form. But how's your footwork? If I step here...
He takes a step, and Will steps the other way, maintaining his relationship to Jack.
Very good. And now I step again.
Continuing in a circle, they reverse their initial positions.
Ta!
Jack turns and runs for the door, which is now directly behind him. Will throws his sword, and it buries itself in the door just above the latch, bolting the exit.
That is a wonderful trick. Except, once again, you're between me and my way out. And now you have no weapon.
Will simply grabs a new sword, this time directly from the furnace. The two duel, their blades flash and ring. Jack's chain smashes across Will's sword, disarming him, but Will picks up another, causing Jack to become distressingly aware of just how many bladed weapons are around them.
Who makes all these?
I do. And I practice with them 3 hours a day.
You need to find yourself a girl, mate. Or perhaps the reason you practice 3 hours a day is that you already found one and are otherwise incapable of wooing said strumpet. You're not a eunuch, are you?
I practice 3 hours a day so that when I meet a pirate, I can kill it.
Will drives Jack backwards onto a ramp with wheels at the center. When Jack passes the midpoint, the ramp balances, teetering the two men that fight atop it. Will gets Jack's chain wrapped around his sword, but then twists the handle of his guard through a link and stabs the sword up so Jack's manacled left arm is now suspended from the ceiling. Jack slashes at Will with his free hand, but Will simply backs away with a grin, looking proud, until Jack slams down on one of the ramp's boards, which flies up and hits Will in the chin, knocking him off the ramp. Jack leaps up, wrapping his legs around the beam, using all his weight in an attempt to free the sword. Will grabs another weapon and jumps back onto the cart, just as the sword comes unstuck, causing Jack to crash onto the ramp as Will steps onto it, catapulting him up to the rafters. Jack gets to his feet and looks up just in time to see Will cutting a rope holding a bunch of casks. They fall onto the ramp, catapulting Jack as well to the rafters. The fight continues with both of them balancing precariously on the beams. Will's finally able to knock Jack's sword away, but the pirate swings himself down in an attempt to flee. Will pursues, but gets a face full of dust as Jack compresses a large bellows in his face. Will recoils and Jack kicks the sword out of his hand. Will grabs a piece of iron and looks up to find Jack's pistol aimed between his eyes.
You cheated.
Pirate.
There's a banging on the door. Jack steps backward, but Will steps as well, blocking the exit.
Move away.
No.
Please move.
No, I cannot just step aside and let you escape.
This shot is not meant for you.
Suddenly, there's the sound of breaking glass. Jack's eyes glaze over and he crumples to the ground. The formerly sleeping blacksmith stands above the now sleeping pirate. A moment later, the front doors smash open, sailors fill the room, and Norrington pushes forward to see Jack on the ground.
Excellent work, Mr. Brown. You've assisted in the capture of a dangerous fugitive.
Just doing my civic duty, sir.
Well, I trust you will always remember this as the day that Captain Jack Sparrow almost escaped. Take him away.
As night falls, a thick fog blankets the entire bay town. Inside the prison at Fort Charles, 4 seedy-looking prisoners gaze out of their cell. One holds a loop of rope, another waggles a bone.
Come here, boy. Come here. Come here, boy.
Want a nice juicy bone?
Nearby, a dog with a keyring in its mouth sits while Jack reclines in an adjoining cell.
You can keep doing that forever. The dog is never going to move.
Oh, excuse us if we haven't resigned ourselves to the gallows just yet. Come on, boy.
Jack tilts his hat down and smiles. At the governor's mansion, Elizabeth lays in bed while a maid puts a bed warmer under her sheets.
There you go, miss. It was a difficult day for you, I'm sure.
I suspected Commodore Norrington would propose, but I must admit I wasn't entirely prepared for it.
Well, I meant you're being threatened by that pirate. Sounds terrifying.
Oh, yes, it was terrifying.
But the Commodore proposed. Fancy that. That's a smart match, miss, if it's not too bold to say.
It is a smart match. He's a fine man. He's what any woman should dream of marrying.
Or that Will Turner. He's a fine man too.
That is too bold.
Begging your pardon, miss. It wasn't my place.
She exits. Elizabeth tries to read, toying absent-mindedly with the medallion around her neck, but her attention drifts from the book to a lamp just before the flame goes out. At the forge, Will finishes working on a sword. Deep in the fog, like a shark fin slicing through the water, a galleon with black sails appears in the harbour. On the parapets of Fort Charles, Norrington and Governor Swann walk together.
Has my daughter given you an answer yet?
No, she hasn't.
Well, she has had a very trying day. Ghastly weather, don't you think?
Bleak. Very, very bleak.
In the distance, there is a soft boom.
I
And
dare
then a-
say.
And then a crescendoing whistle.
Cannon fire!
Norrington tackles Swann as the wall of the parapet explodes.
Return fire!
Inside the prison, Jack sits up as more booms ring out.
I know those guns.
He peers through the bars of the window and sees a large ship floating in the harbour.
It's the Pearl.
The Black Pearl? I've heard stories. She's been preying on ships and settlements for near 10 years. Never leaves any survivors.
No survivors? Then where do the stories come from, I wonder?
Cannon fire lights up the fog. Both the fort and the town are hammered. The streets, buildings, docks, and ships of Port Royal shatter and explode under the onslaught. If this isn't hell on earth, it's about to be. Longboats emerge from the fog carrying armed pirates. They swarm, striking down villagers indiscriminately and setting fires. However, 2 of them forego the festivities. The taller of the pair shoves a wooden eyeball in his right socket.
Come on, Pintel. You know what the captain said. No pillaging tonight.
The other, a particularly ugly, stout man, carrying a torch, scans the area with a grimace.
Don't worry, Ragetti. I didn't forget. We get to have our own fun.
At the forge, Will arms himself with multiple axes, daggers, and swords before stepping out into the street. A woman runs past, chased by a wild-eyed pirate carrying clay bombs. Will throws his axe and it flies through the air, hitting him in the back, and the man drops to the ground. Death and mayhem are everywhere as the townsfolk battle the pirates. Up on the parapets, soldiers scramble while Governor Swann looks around helplessly.
Sight the muzzle flash. I need a full strike, fore and aft. Mr. Stevens, more cartridges. Governor, barricade yourself inside my office. That's an order.
In the governor's mansion, Elizabeth looks out from the balcony and sees pirates barging through the gate at the edge of the property. She bolts from her room and reaches the landing above the foyer just as the butler answers a banging on the front door.
Don't!
Too late. He opens the door and is face to face with Pintel and his pistol.
Hello, chum.
Bang! The butler crumples, and Elizabeth screams in shock, getting the attention of the intruders.
Up there!
Pintel and Ragetti rush the stairs as more pirates enter the house behind them. Elizabeth scrambles to her room and locks herself in. She turns and is startled by her maid.
Miss Swann, they've come to kidnap you.
What?
You're the governor's daughter.
Something slams against the door.
Listen, they haven't seen you. Go hide, and the first chance you get, run to the fort.
The maid nods and hides as Elizabeth moves to the opposite side of the room. As the door bursts open, Pintel and Ragetti see Elizabeth dashing away and gives chase. But as Pintel walks through the next doorway, he gets the pan of the bed warmer in his face. With the invaders distracted, the maid slips out of the room. Elizabeth swings the bed warmer at Ragetti, but he catches it by the handle.
Gotcha, haven't I?
Elizabeth, being the very ingenuous? I always mix up my words when I'm telling these stories, lads. Sorry about that. Anyways, she pulls the release and the pan lid swings open and spills hot coals on Ragetti's head. She then runs for the hole.
No, hot, it's hot! You burned me!
Come on!
Pintel runs for the stairs while Ragetti vaults the handrail, landing between Elizabeth and the front door. Suddenly, a cannonball rips through the foyer and causes a chandelier to come crashing down. Elizabeth uses the distraction to evade Ragetti and run into the dining room. She closes the door and forks a candelabra down on the door pulls, but the makeshift bolt holds for only a few seconds before the doors give way and the pirates rush in. But the room is empty. Ragetti spots an open window and starts toward it, but Pintel stops him.
We know you're here, Poppet.
Poppet.
Come out, and we promise we won't hurt you.
What?
Pintel gives him a look, obviously lying.
We will find you, Poppet. You got something of ours, and it calls to us.
Gold.
Elizabeth peers through the crack of a cabinet door.
The gold calls to us.
Elizabeth looks down at the medallion, and it glints in the thin line of light that spills through the crack in the doors. But then the light is gone. She looks up, and Pintel's eye is visible between the doors.
Hello, Poppet.
Pintel yanks the closet doors and...
Parley!
What?
Parley! I invoke the right of parley. According to the code of the Brethren set down by the pirates Morgan and Bartholomew, you have to take me to your captain.
I know the code.
If an adversary demands parley, you can do them no harm until the parley is complete.
To blazes with the code.
She wants to be taken to the captain, and she'll go without a fuss. We must honour the code.
Out on the street, Will is grabbed round the throat by a large pirate.
Say goodbye!
Just then, a cannonball whizzes in and blows at the wall above them, causing a hanging sign to swing down. Will ducks just enough to let it go over him and smash into his assailant.
Goodbye.
Will turns, and through the smoke and dust sees Elizabeth being escorted roughly by Pintel and Ragetti. Will is about to give chase when he sees the wild-eyed pirate he hit earlier. He then looks down to see a small bomb at his feet. Fortunately, 'tis a dud, but a couple of pirates run by and one of them smacks Will in the back of the head, knocking him out. Inside the prison, Jack dives for cover just before a cannonball crashes through the wall of the cell next to his. The other prisoners scramble through the newly formed hole.
My sympathies, friend. You've got no manner of luck at all.
Jack watches as the others escape, and the moon appears in a small window of clouds, casting an eerie light into the prison. With nothing better to do, Jack picks up a bone and holds it out of his cell.
Come on, doggy. It's just you and me now. It's you and old Jack. Come on. Come here. That's a boy. Good boy. Come get the bone.
To his surprise, the dog approaches him.
That's a good boy. Come on. Bit closer, bit closer. That's it, doggy. Come on, you filthy, slimy, mangy cur.
The keyring is nearly within Jack's reach, when the sudden bang is heard at the top of the nearby staircase. The dog bolts down the hole, taking the keys with him.
No, 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 don't! I didn't mean that!
Jack watches as a sentry falls to the bottom of the stairs, dead. A pair of pirates follow, one with long hair, the other with barely any.
Thank the armory.
He turns to go, but the long-haired pirate spots the prisoner.
Well, well, well. Look what we have here, Twig. Captain Jack Sparrow.
Hello, narrator.
Mr. Twig?
You missed a line there. That's fine. Last time I saw you, you were all alone on a godforsaken island, shrinking into the distance. His fortunes aren't improved much, are they, Koehler?
Jack steps close to the bars, putting himself in a spill of moonlight.
Worry about your own fortunes, gentlemen. The deepest circle of hell is reserved for betrayals and mutineers.
Koehler reaches through the bars and grabs Jack by the throat. Under the moonlight, Koehler's arm and hand are skeletal.
So there is a curse. That's interesting.
You know nothing of hell.
Koehler shoves Jack backwards. Now out of the moonlight, his hand is normal again. He and Twig walk off.
That's very interesting.
Outside, the clouds hide the moon again. Amid the thunder of cannon fire, a longboat occupied by pirates and Elizabeth slips through the fog toward the Pearl. The longboat is winched to the rail, and pirates stare at Elizabeth as Ragetti helps her disembark. A massive man with no shirt and impressive muscles approaches them.
I didn't know we were taking on captives.
She's invoked the right to parley with Captain Barbosa.
I am here to negotiate.
The man slaps her.
You'll speak when spoken to.
His wrist is grabbed by a man with a large feathered cap, an ornate coat, and a monkey on his shoulder.
And ye'll not lay a hand on those under the protection of parley.
Aye, sir.
The man releases his underling and turns to Elizabeth with a smile.
Apologies, miss.
Captain Barbosa, I am here to negotiate the cessation of hostilities against Port Royal.
There are a lot of wrong words in there, miss. We're not but humble pirates. What is it that you want?
I want you to leave and never come back.
I am disinclined to acquiesce to your request. Means no.
Very well.
She moves to the rail, pulls out the medallion, and dangles it over the side.
I'll drop it.
Behold, to burst in with swag, that bit of shine matters to us. Why?
It's what you've been searching for. I recognize this ship. I saw it 8 years ago on the crossing from England.
Did you now?
Fine. Well, I suppose if it is worthless, then there's no point in me keeping it.
She lets the chain slip a few inches, and the pirates lunge forward.
No!
Elizabeth smiles triumphantly.
You have a name, missy.
Elizabeth Turner. I'm a maid in the governor's household.
Barbosa grins as he turns to the other pirates, who exchange surreptitious glances.
Oh, Miss Turner.
Bootstrap.
And how does a maid come to own a trinket such as that? A family heirloom, perhaps?
I didn't steal it, if that's what you mean.
Very well, you hand that over, we'll put your town to our rudder, and ne'er return.
Elizabeth hesitates, but places the medallion in Barbosa's hand.
Our bargain?
Barbosa turns away and nods to the bosun.
Still the guns and stow 'em. Signal the men, set the flags, and make good to clear port.
Elizabeth rushes after Barbosa.
Wait! You have to take me to shore! According to the code of the Order of the Brethren...
First, your return to shore was not part of our negotiations, nor our agreement, so I must do nothing. And secondly, you must be a pirate for the pirate's code to apply, and you're not. And thirdly, the code is more what you'd call guidelines than actual rules. Welcome aboard the Black Pearl, Miss Turner.
At dawn, Will comes to where he fell. He stands and takes in the devastation of Port Royal. The harbour is dotted with burning and sunken ships. Buildings are razed and still smoulder. Will races toward Fort Charles and into Norrington's office, where the Commodore is looking over a large map with the governor and several officers.
They've taken her. They've taken Elizabeth.
Mr. Murtogg, remove this man.
One of the sentries from the dock steps forward and grabs Will by the arm.
We have to hunt them down. We must save her.
And where do you propose we start? If you have any information concerning my daughter, please share it.
That Jack Sparrow. He talked about the Black Pearl.
The other sentry, Mullroy, is there as well.
Mentioned it is more what he did.
Ask him where it is. Make a deal with him. He can lead us to it.
No, the pirates who invaded this fort left Sparrow locked in his cell, ergo they are not his allies. Governor, we will establish their most likely course and...
That's not good enough.
Mr. Turner, you're not a military man, you are not a sailor, you are a blacksmith. This is not the moment for rash actions.
Norrington moves Will to the door and leans close.
Do not make the mistake of thinking you are the only man here who cares for Elizabeth.
In the prison, Jack attempts to pick the lock of his cell when he hears someone approaching. He stops and moves away from the door just before Will walks in.
You, Sparrow.
Aye.
You were familiar with that ship, the Black Pearl?
I've heard of it.
Where does it make berth?
Where does it make berth? Have you not heard the stories? Captain Barbossa and his crew of miscreants sail from the dreaded island of Murtogg. It's an island that cannot be found except by those who already know where it is.
The ship's real enough. Therefore, its anchorage must be a real place. Where is it?
Why ask me?
Because you're a pirate.
And you want to turn pirate yourself, is that it?
Never. They took Miss Swann.
Oh, so it is that you found a girl, I see. Well, if you're intending to brave all, hasten to our rescue, and so win fair lady's heart, you'll have to do it alone, mate. I see no profit in it for me.
I can get you out of here.
How's that? The key's run off.
I helped build these cells. These are half-pin barrel hinges. With the right leverage and the proper application of strength, the door will lift free.
What's your name?
Will Turner.
That will be short for William, I imagine. Good, strong name. No doubt named for your father, eh?
Yes.
Aha. Well, Mr. Turner, I've changed my mind. If you spring me from this cell, I swear on pain of death, I shall take you to the Black Pearl and your bonny lass. Do we have an accord?
Jack sticks his hand out of the cell, and Will gives him a suspicious look, but shakes it.
Agreed.
Agreed. Get me out.
Will places a bench at the bottom of the cell door and puts his weight on it, causing the iron door to rise and fall off its hinges.
Hurry. Someone will have heard that.
Not without my effects.
Jack grabs them, and they're on their way. They make their way to the docks and hide under a bridge where Jack eyes the Dauntless.
We're going to steal a ship. That ship.
Commandeer. We're going to commandeer that ship. Nautical term.
He shifts his gaze and points to the interceptor.
One question about your business, boy, or there's no use going. This girl. How far are you willing to go to save her?
I'd die for her.
Oh, good. No worries, then.
A few minutes later, a group of soldiers march along the shore past some crates, upside-down longboats, and fishing nets. Once they're gone, one of the upside-down boats grows 4 legs and walks into the water. Jack and Will, water up to their necks, traverse the ocean floor in a bubble of air beneath the hull.
This is either madness or brilliance.
It's remarkable how often those two traits coincide.
Soon after, the two scale the side of the Dauntless. On the deck, Gillette supervises sailors as Jack and Will run up to them, brandishing a pistol and sword, respectively.
Everybody stay calm. We're taking over the ship.
Aye, avast!
The sailors burst out laughing as Jack gives Will a look of disbelief. Gillette steps forward.
This ship cannot be crewed by 2 men. You'll never make it out of the bay.
Son, I'm Captain Jack Sparrow. Savvy?
He points his pistol at Gillette's nose and cocks it. On the interceptor, crewmen load supplies onto it as another officer checks the manifest. He turns to Norrington, then stops, noticing something in the distance.
Commodore?
Norrington turns, takes out a telescope, and looks through it to see a longboat full of sailors, including Gillette.
Sir, they've taken the Dauntless. Commodore, they've taken the ship. Sparrow and Turner, they've taken the Dauntless.
Norrington moves the spyglass to the Dauntless and sees the duo preparing the sails.
Rash, Turner. Too rash. That is, without doubt, the worst pirate I have ever seen.
On the Dauntless, Jack stands at the wheel, relaxed, as Will approaches him.
Here they come.
Jack smiles as the interceptor approaches, passing Gillette and his men in the longboat.
Bring her around. Bring her around!
Soon enough, grappling hooks are thrown and the two ships are drawn together. Sailors climb and swing across, emptying the interceptor while Norrington himself crosses via gangplank. But they see nobody on the deck.
Search every cabin, every hold, down to the bilges.
Jack and Will swing over to the other ship unseen. Once on the interceptor, they cut the ropes of the grappling hooks binding the ships together, and the two start drifting apart. Norrington turns as he hears the gangplank falling into the water.
Sailors, back to the interceptor, now!
Too late. One brave sailor tries to swing across on a rope, but the interceptor is already too far away. Jack waves at Norrington from the freshly commandeered ship.
Thank you, Commodore, for getting us ready to make way. We'd have had a hard time of it by ourselves.
Some soldiers on deck fire fruitlessly at Jack. Norrington seethes but remains composed.
Set top sails and clear up this mess.
Quarter astern, we won't catch them.
I don't need to catch them, just get them in range of the long nines.
Come about, run out the guns. Are we to fire on our own ship, sir?
I'd rather see her at the bottom of the ocean than in the hands of a pirate.
The steersman tries to turn the wheel, but there's no change in course.
Commodore, he's disabled the rudder change, sir.
Gillette stands in the rowboat and sees the Dauntless looming toward it.
Abandon ship!
The men dive for the water just before the Dauntless runs through the rowboat with a loud crunch as the interceptor dwindles into the distance. The ship's officer watches in amazement.
Got to be the best pirate I've ever seen.
So it would seem.
The interceptor cuts across the waves. The ocean is calm and the sky is clear.
When I was a lad living in England, my mother raised me by herself. After she died, I came out here, looking for my father.
Is that so?
My father, Bill Turner? At the jail, it was only after you learned my name that you agreed to help. Since that's what I wanted, I didn't press the matter. I'm not a simpleton, Jack. You knew my father.
I knew him. Probably one of the few who knew him as William Turner. Everyone else just called him Bootstrap, or Bootstrap Bill.
Bootstrap?
Good man. Good pirate. I swear you look just like him.
It's not true. He was a merchant sailor, a good, respectable man who obeyed the law.
He was a bloody pirate, a scallywag.
Will draws his sword.
My father was not a pirate.
Put it away, son. It's not worth you getting beat again.
You didn't beat me. You ignored the rules of engagement. In a fair fight, I'd kill you.
And that's not much incentive for me to fight fair then, is it?
Jack turns the ship's wheel hard, causing a sail boom to whip around and slam Will in the chest. Will drops his sword as he's swept off the ship and holds onto the boom, dangling above the water. Jack picks up Will's sword and points it at him.
Now, as long as you're hanging there, pay attention. The only rules that really matter are these: what a man can do and what a man can't do. For instance, you can accept that your father was a pirate and a good man, or you can't. But pirate is in your blood, boy, so you'll have to square with that someday. Now me, for example, I can let you drown, but I can't bring the ship into Tortuga all by my onesies, savvy? So,
Jack swings the wheel round again, bringing the boom back. Will falls onto the deck and finds his own sword pointed at him.
can you sail under the command of a pirate,
Jack flips the sword, offering it to Will.
or can you not?
Will accepts the weapon.
Tortuga.
Tortuga.
Tortuga, a dank, dirty port where the tides have swept together the scum of the Caribbean. Pirates drag a merchant around for sport, other fires guns, chase ladies, and drink to excess while Will and Jack walk through the streets.
More importantly, it is indeed a sad lot that has never breathed deep the sweet proliferous bouquet that is Tortuga, savvy? What do you think?
It'll linger.
I'll tell you, mate, if every town in the world were like this one, no man would ever feel unwanted.
A lady in a crimson dress, spots Jack and strides up to him.
Scarlet!
She slaps him and stalks off.
Not sure I deserve that.
He turns back to see a smiling blonde wench.
Giselle!
Oh my god. And who was she?
What?
Jack receives another slap and Giselle stalks off.
I may have deserved that.
A while later, they find a drunken man in a tattered navy jacket lying in the mud asleep next to some pigs. It's Mr. Gibbs. Jack splashes a bucket of water in his face, waking him.
Curse you for breathing, you slackshot idiot! Mother's love, Jack. You know better than to wake a man when he's sleeping. It's bad luck.
Fortunately, I know how to counter it. The man who did the waking buys the man who is sleeping a drink. The man who is sleeping drinks it while listening to a proposition from the man who did the waking.
Aye, that'll about do it.
Jack helps Gibbs to his feet, and then Gibbs is hit with a second wave of water. Will stands by with the bucket.
Blasted, I'm already awake.
That was for the smell.
Gibbs goes to retort angrily, but shrugs understandingly. They find a seedy tavern where a few drunks are shouting and brawling. Jack glances at Will.
Keep a sharp eye.
He moves off and sits with Gibbs at a table in the shadows while Will stands on lookout.
Now, what's the nature of this venture you're on?
I'm going after the Black Pearl.
Gibbs chokes on his rum.
I know where it's going to be, and I'm going to take it.
Jack, it's a fool's errand. You know better than me the tales of the Black Pearl.
That's why I know what Barbossa is up to. All I need is a crew.
From what I hear tell of Captain Barbossa, he is not a man to suffer fools, nor strike a bargain with one.
Well, then I'd say it's a very good thing I'm not a fool then, eh?
Prove me wrong. What makes you think Barbossa will give his ship to you?
Let's just say it's a matter of leverage, eh?
He tilts his head toward Will, who is standing vigilant but possibly in earshot. Gibbs doesn't seem to get it. Jack jerks his head again.
The kid?
That is the child of Bootstrap Bill Turner. His only child. Savvy?
Is he now? Leverage, says you. I think I feel a change in the wind, says I. I'll find us a crew. There's bound to be some sailors on this rock as crazy as you.
One can only hope.
Jack lifts his tankard in a toast.
Take what you can.
Give nothing back.
They clink tankards and drink. Out at sea, the Black Pearl cuts through the water. Elizabeth paces about the captain's cabin as Pintel and Ragetti enter. Pintel holds a wine-coloured dress.
You'll be dining with the captain, and he requests you wear this.
Well, you may tell the captain that I am disinclined to acquiesce to his request.
He said you'd say that. He also said, if that be the case, you'll be dining with the crew, and you'll be naked.
Elizabeth snatches the dress, much to Pintel's disappointment.
Fine.
The dinner table is filled with an impressive array of food. One of the pirates sets down the final dish, a whole roasted pig, places the silverware perfectly, then lights the candles before exiting. Elizabeth sits with Barbossa. She cuts a tiny piece of meat and eats it daintily.
There's no need to stand on ceremony, nor called to impress anyone. You must be hungry.
Elizabeth drops the pretense. She's starving and she begins to eat like it, biting into a leg of meat. Barbossa watches her intently.
Try the wine.
Elizabeth does. A huge swig, then a bite of bread.
And the apples. One of those next.
She stares at the apple and stops chewing, suddenly aware that both Barbossa and the monkey are staring at her.
It's poisoned.
There'd be no sense to be killing you, Miss Turner.
Then release me. You have your trinket. I'm of no further use to you.
Barbossa produces the medallion and lets it dangle from his fingers.
You don't know what this is, do ya?
It's a pirate medallion.
This is Aztec gold. One of 882 identical pieces they delivered in a stone chest to Cortez himself. Blood money paid to stem the slaughter he wreaked upon him with his armies. But the greed of Cortez was insatiable. So the heathen gods placed upon the gold a terrible curse. Any mortal that removes but a single piece from that stone chest shall be punished for eternity.
I hardly believe in ghost stories anymore, Captain Barbossa.
Aye, that's exactly what I thought when we were first told the tale. Buried on an island of dead what cannot be found, except for those who know where it is. Find it we did. There be the chest. Inside be the gold. Took 'em all. We spent 'em, and traded 'em, and frittered 'em away on drink and food and pleasurable company. The more we gave 'em away, the more we came to realize. The drink would not satisfy. Food turned to ash in our mouths, and all the pleasurable company in the world could not slake our lust. We are cursed men, Miss Turner. Compelled by greed we were, but now we are consumed by it. There is one way we can end our curse. All the scattered pieces of the Aztec gold must be returned, and the blood repaid. Thanks to ye, we have the final piece.
And the blood to be repaid?
That's why there's no sense to be killing you. Yet. Apple?
The monkey screeches. Terribly sorry, lads. I lost my place in my own story. How embarrassing. Must be the rum.
I'm slapping
Where
the apple
was
out of his hand.
Anyways, Elizabeth slaps the apple out of his hand and stands, brandishing the stolen knife. A beat, and then she tries to run. After a brief struggle, she buries the knife in Barbossa's chest, but Barbossa simply glances at the weapon hilt and casually pulls it out. There is blood on the blade, but none anywhere else.
I'm curious. After killing me, what is it you're planning on doing next?
Elizabeth turns back and barrels out the door toward the deck, where she finds the crew, naught but skeletons, working at their stations, coiling lines, navigating the ship, and swabbing the decks. She turns away, runs again, and hides beneath the steps to the aft deck. Suddenly, the skeletal monkey drops down beside her, clutching the medallion. Elizabeth bolts back into the cabin, but runs into Barbossa standing just inside the doorway. He grabs her and turns her back around.
Look! The moonlight shows us for what we really are. We are not among the living, and so we cannot die, but neither are we dead.
He spins her back around to face him.
For too long I have been parched of thirst and unable to quench it. Too long I have been starving to death and haven't died. I feel nothing. Not the wind on my face, nor the spray of the sea, nor the warmth of a woman's flesh.
Elizabeth backs out of the cabin, and Barbossa reaches out toward her, his hand becoming skeletal as it enters the moonlight. He steps forward and the rest of his body transforms.
You best start believing in ghost stories, Miss Turner. You're in one.
He grabs a bottle of wine, uncorks it with his teeth, tilts his head back and drinks. The wine runs through his jaw and ribcage, drenching his clothes. Elizabeth darts around him back into the cabin. Barbossa hurls the bottle away, shuts the cabin doors, and turns to his men.
What are you looking at? Back to work!
The next day in Tortuga, Jack, Will, and Gibbs survey a weather-beaten group of swabs standing in a ragged lineup.
Feast your eyes, Captain. All of them faithful hands before the mast, every man worth his salt, and crazy to boot.
So this is your able-bodied crew?
Jack stops in front of a short sailor with a large, colourful parrot on his shoulder.
You, sailor.
Cotton, sir.
Mr. Cotton, do you have the courage and fortitude to follow orders and stay true in the face of danger and almost certain death? Mr. Cotton, answer, man.
He's a mute, sir. Poor devil had his tongue cut out, so he trained the parrot to talk for him. No one's yet figured how.
Mr. Cotton's parrot. Same question. Into yourselves! Into yourselves!
Mostly we figure that means yes.
Of course it does. Satisfied, Will?
Well, you've proved they're mad.
And what's the benefit for us?
Jack turns at the sound of the voice and walks over to a sailor with downcast eyes, her face shaded by a hat. Jack lifts the cap away and the sailor looks up, and she's angry.
Anamaria.
She smacks Jack across the face.
I suppose you didn't deserve that one either.
No, that one I deserved.
You stole my boat.
Actually,
She smacks him again, even harder.
borrowed without permission, but with every intention of bringing it back.
But you didn't.
You'll get another one.
I will.
A better one.
A better one.
Will points to the interceptor.
That one.
What one? That one? Aye, that one. What say you?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, no.
Oh dear. Seems the parrot's been a bit moody.
Frightful bad luck to bring a woman aboard, sir. No.
It'll be far worse not to have her.
That night, the interceptor sails through a vicious storm. The crew are surprisingly capable sailors, but it takes everything they have just to keep the ship afloat. Will and Gibbs wrestle with some ropes while Jack navigates at the helm.
How can we sail to an island that nobody can find with a compass that doesn't work?
Aye, the compass don't point north, but we're not trying to find north, are we?
Gibbs climbs the tilted deck toward the captain.
We should drop canvas, sir.
She can hold a bit longer.
What's in your head that put you in such a fine mood, Captain?
We're catching up.
The next morning, the Black Pearl is anchored in a bay. Pintel and some of the other pirates walk into the captain's cabin where Elizabeth is looking out a window.
Time to go, Poppy.
They escort her to the deck where Twigg binds her hands in front of her and Barbossa drapes the medallion around her neck. They then load her into a longboat, and every member of the Black Pearl's crew row with her into an island cave. They have arrived at Isla de Muerta. Pretty good tale, isn't it? I'm actually enjoying myself. But we're only about halfway done. Give me a few minutes to check on a few things top deck. I'll be back in about 10. Hopefully the crew hasn't completely destroyed my ship while I'm down here. Fortunately, the crew is keeping the ship afloat, and we're going through some clear waters, so I should have enough time to tell you the rest of the story. Lucky you. Now, where were we? The interceptor sails quietly through a fog-covered ship graveyard. Will and Gibbs look out at the many wreckages while Jack continues to navigate.
Discord, please. Oh my god, Discord. Ah! Dead man tails!
It's a chill in the bones how many honest sailors have been claimed by this passage.
How is it that Jack came by that compass?
Not a lot's known about Jack Sparrow before he showed up in Tortuga with a mind to go after the treasure of Isla de Muerta. That was before I'd met him, back when he was captain of the Black Pearl.
What? You failed to mention that.
Well, he plays things close to the vest now, and a hard-learned lesson it was. See, 3 days out on the venture, the first mate comes to him and says everything's an equal share. That should mean the location of the treasure, too. So Jack gives up the bearings. That night, there was mutiny. They marooned Jack on an island and left him to die, but not before he'd gone mad with the heat.
Ah, so that's the reason for all the...
Will widens his eyes and imitates Jack's eccentric mannerisms.
Reason's got nothing to do with it. Now, Will, when a pirate's marooned, he's given a pistol with a single shot. One shot, now that won't do much good for hunting or to be rescued. But after 3 weeks of surviving, starving belly and dying of thirst, that pistol starts to look real friendly. But Jack, he escaped the island, and he still has that single shot. Oh, but he won't use it, though, save on one man, his mutinous first mate.
Barbosa. How did Jack get off the island?
Well, I'll tell you. He waded out into the shallows, and he waited there 3 days and 3 nights, till all manner of sea creatures came acclimated to his presence. Then, on the 4th morning, he roped himself a couple of sea turtles, lashed them together, and made a raft.
He roped a couple of sea turtles.
Aye, sea turtles.
What did he use for rope?
Gibbs goes to answer, then realizes he didn't know, but looks up to see Jack standing nearby.
Human hair from my back.
Before Will can question the answer, Jack turns to the crew.
Let go of the anchor.
Let
Go
go
the
of the anchor. Aye.
Young Mr. Turner and I are to go ashore.
Cotton, what if the worst should happen?
Keep to the code.
Aye, the code.
In the cave, Barbosa's crew drags Elizabeth along until they arrive at a large cavern where pirates are adding their booty to a spectacular treasure. Piles of coins, gold and silver ingots, jewelry, art, jade, ivory, brightly coloured silks, furniture, jewels and pearls, mirrors and swords, and at the centre, a hole in the ceiling that lets in a column of sunlight which shines on an Aztec stone chest. Collar gives Elizabeth a shove in the back.
Move.
Pintel and Ragetti hold in a large chest together.
10 years of holding swag.
Now we finally get to spend it.
They dump the chest, which contains a nice dress and parasol.
Once we're quit of the curse, we'll be rich men. You can buy an eye what actually fits, and it's made of glass.
This one does splinter something terrible.
Stop rubbing it.
Back in the tunnel, a lantern hangs from the small boat that Jack and Will row through the cave. To one side, Will spots a skeleton with a sword in its back. Master Turner.
Oh, that's very shiny. What code is Gibbs to keep to if the worst should happen?
Pirate's code. Any man who falls behind is left behind.
No heroes amongst thieves, eh?
You know, for having such a bleak outlook on pirates, you're well on way to becoming one. Sprung a man from jail, commandeered a ship of the fleet, sailed with a buccaneer crew out of Tortuga.
Suddenly, dozens of small, bright circles appear on the cave walls. Will glances down. Beneath the water, thousands of coins reflect the lantern's light.
And you're completely obsessed with treasure.
That's not true. I am not obsessed with treasure.
Not all treasure is silver and gold, mate.
They reach the landing area where the pirates' boats are moored and climb to a ledge overlooking the cavern. They see Elizabeth being shoved to the top of the central treasure pile. Barbossa waits by the stone chest at the top, and pirates surround the scene.
Gentlemen, the time has come. Our salvation is nigh. Our torment is near an end. For 10 years we've been tested and tried, and each man Jacoby here has proved his mettle 100 times over, and 100 times again.
Suffered I have.
Punished we were, the lot of us, disproportionate to our crime.
Barbossa kicks the lid off the stone chest. Inside are hundreds of gold coins identical to the medallion. A stone knife lays on top of them.
Here 'tis, the cursed treasure of Cortez himself. Every last piece that went astray we have returned, save for this.
Will scrambles for the cave opening, but Jack restrains him.
Jack!
Not yet. We wait for the opportune moment.
When's that? When it's of greatest profit to you?
May I ask you something? Have I ever given you a reason not to trust me? Do us a favor. I know it's difficult for you, but please, stay here and try not to do anything stupid.
Jack walks away. In the cavern, Barbossa picks up the stone knife.
And who among us has paid the blood sacrifice owed to the heathen gods?
Aye.
And whose blood must yet be paid?
Hers.
You know the first thing I'm going to do after the curse is lifted? Eat a whole bushel of apples. Begun by blood, the blood undone.
Jack turns as he hears something behind him. His eyes go wide, but too late. Will brings an oar down on Jack's head, knocking him out.
Sorry, Jack, but I'm not going to be your leverage.
Barbossa grabs Elizabeth's wrist, slices her palm, then claps the medallion in her hand.
That's it?
Waste not.
He drops it into the chest. Barbossa closes his eyes and takes a deep breath. The pirates tense, waiting, expectant. They all look at each other, look at themselves. Nothing happens.
Did it work? I feel no different.
How do we tell?
Barbossa frowns, draws his pistol, and shoots Pintel square in the chest. Pintel looks down at his wound.
You're not dead.
No. He shot me.
It didn't work.
The curse is still upon us!
You, maid, your father, what was his name? What's your father, William Turner?
No.
Barbossa picks up the medallion and holds it in front of Elizabeth's face.
Where's his child? The child that sailed from England 8 years ago. The child in whose veins flows the blood of William Turner. Where?
When she doesn't answer, Barbossa slaps her hard, sending her sprawling down to the water's edge behind them, unconscious. The medallion falls beside her. The bosun turns to Pintel and Ragetti.
2. You brought us the wrong person.
No, she had the medallion. She's the proper age.
As the pirates argue, Will quietly pops out of the water near Elizabeth and places his hand over her mouth to prevent her from screaming as she wakes. Elizabeth grabs the medallion.
She said her name was Turner. You heard her. I think she lied to us.
Barbossa, you brought us here for nothing.
I won't take questioning or second guesses, not from the likes of you, Mr. Twigg.
Who's to blame him? Every decision you've made led us from bad to worse.
It's you who sit bootstrapped to the depths.
And it's you who brought us here in the first place.
Any coward here dare challenge me, let him speak. Huh?
I say we cut her throat and spill all her blood, just in case.
Barbossa turns to see that Elizabeth and the medallion are gone.
The medallion! She's taken it! Get after her, you feckless pack of ingrates!
The pirates scramble to their boats, reach for the oars, and
They're gone missing. Find them.
As the pirates search the cave, Jack wanders around into the cavern, still dazed.
You!
You're supposed to be dead.
Am I not?
Jack turns and walks away, but is met with a pistol in his face. He turns back the way he came and faces another pistol.
Pauline, parsley, partner.
Parlay?
That's the one. Parlay.
Parlay? Damn to the depths whatever muttonhead thought of parlay.
That would be the French.
A trail of oars float in the water leading up to the interceptor. Elizabeth climbs aboard with Will.
Not more pirates.
Welcome aboard, Miss Elizabeth.
Mr. Gibbs?
Hey boy, where be Jack?
Jack? Jack Sparrow?
He fell behind.
Gibbs pauses for a moment, taking in the news.
Keep to the code.
Weigh anchor and hoist the sails. Split quick, you dibbis.
In the cave, Jack is granted his parley with Barbossa.
How the blazes did you get off that island?
When you marooned me on that godforsaken spit of land, you forgot one very important thing, mate. I'm Captain Jack Sparrow.
Ha! Well, won't be making that mistake again. Gents, you all remember Captain Jack Sparrow? Kill him.
The girl's blood didn't work, did it?
Hold your fire. You know whose blood we need.
I know whose blood you need.
The interceptor has made its way out to sea. In the cabin, Elizabeth tries to tie a bandage around her hand.
What sort of a man trades a man's life for a ship?
Pirate. Here, let me.
Thank you.
You said you gave Barbossa my name as yours. Why?
I don't know.
They gaze at each other a moment. Then Elizabeth winces.
I'm sorry. Blacksmith's hands. I know. They're rough.
No, I mean, yes, they are, but don't stop.
Will ties off the bandage, then moves his hand up to her face.
Elizabeth.
She moves his hand to the medallion around her neck and holds it out to him.
It's yours.
I thought I'd lost it the day they rescued me. It was a gift from my father. He sent it to me. Why did you take it?
Because I was afraid you were a pirate. That would have been awful.
Will stares at the medallion and makes the connection.
It wasn't your blood they needed. It was my father's blood. My blood. The blood of a pirate.
Will, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me.
He closes his fist around the medallion and slams it against the table. Elizabeth watches him for a moment, then turns and leaves. On the Black Pearl, Jack sits with Barbossa in his cabin.
So you expect me to leave? You expect to leave me standing on some beach with nothing but a name and your word it's the one I need, and I watch you sail away on my ship?
No, I expect to leave you standing on some beach with absolutely no name at all, watching me sail away on my ship, and then I'll shout the name back to you. Savvy?
That still leaves us with the problem of me standing on some beach with naught but a name and your word it's the one I need.
Of the two of us, I'm the only one who hasn't committed mutiny. Therefore, my word is the one we'll be trusting. Although, I suppose I should be thanking you because, in fact, if you hadn't betrayed me and left me to die, I would have an equal share in that curse, same as you. Funny old world, isn't it?
Jack grabs an apple, takes a bite, then offers some of it to Barbossa as the bosun walks into the cabin.
Captain, we're coming up on the interceptor.
Barbossa gets to the deck and spots his prey on the horizon through the spyglass. After a moment, Jack appears through the telescope lens.
I'm having a thought here, Barbossa. What say we run up a flag of truce, I scurry over to the interceptor, and I negotiate the return of your medallion, eh? What say you to that?
No, you see, Jack, that's exactly the attitude that lost you the pearl. People are easier to search when they're dead. Lock him in the brig.
Barbossa grabs the apple from Jack as the bosun takes him away. He looks at the fruit a moment before throwing it overboard. On the interceptor, Elizabeth emerges onto the deck as Anamaria steers the ship and Gibbs commands the crew.
Hands aloft to loose topgallants. With this wind out astern, she'll carry every sail we've got.
What's happening?
The Black Pearl, she's gaining on us.
But this is the fastest ship in the Caribbean.
You can tell them that after they've caught us.
We're shallower on the draft, right?
Aye.
Well, then can't we lose them amongst those shoals?
On the horizon, there's the indistinct shapes of islands.
You don't have to outrun 'em long, just long enough.
Lighten the ship! Stem to stern!
Anything we can afford to lose, see that it's lost.
On the Pearl, the bosun locks Jack in the brig. There's standing water on the floor.
Apparently there's a leak.
He notices a crack in the bulkhead and peeks out to see a cask drift by. The interceptor is bailing crates, cannonballs, anything that might weigh them down. On the deck, Barbossa prepares to attack.
Hold on the main brace, make ready the guns, and run out the sweeps.
The Pearl's side cannons are deployed and the Jolly Roger is hoisted. Hatches slide back on the hull and the galley oars extend out to each side. In unison, they catch the water and the ship shoots forward. On the interceptor, Will stops a crewman from dumping a cannonball overboard.
We're going to need that.
It was a good plan, up until now.
Gibbs, we have to make a stand. We must fight. Load the guns.
With what?
Anything. Everything. Anything we have left.
Load the guns, case shot and Lagrange, nails and crushed glass, with a will!
Gibbs supervises the crew as they load anything and everything into the cannons. Silverware, jugs, Gibbs's flask, anything.
The Pearl's gonna luff up on our post quarter. She'll rake us without ever presenting a target.
Lower the anchor on the right side. On the starboard side.
It certainly has the element of surprise.
You're daft, lady. You both are.
Daft like Jack. Lower the starboard anchor! Do it, you gobs, or it's you will load into the cannons!
The anchor splashes into the water, hits the bottom and drags a moment before catching on a reef. The interceptor begins turning so fast the table in the ship's cabin topples and the medallion falls to the floor. On the deck, Elizabeth turns to Anamaria.
Let go!
Anamaria releases the wheel which begins spinning wildly, pivoting the ship even faster than before. Her cannons coming around, brought to bear on the Black Pearl. Barbossa squints a moment before he realizes what's happening.
They're club hauling! Hard a port! Rock the starboard oars!
Jack is tossed against his cell wall when the Pearl rotates forcefully. When he regains his bearings, he looks out the peephole and sees the interceptor's cannons.
Keep us steady, man!
The two ships are side to side, each with loaded gunnery and rowdy crews.
Fire!
Now!
Fire all!
All hell breaks loose as the two ships fire all guns at once. The interceptor takes far more damage than the Black Pearl. A shot crashes through the brig.
Stop blowing holes in my ship!
On the Pearl, Pintel looks to Ragetti, who has a fork sticking out of his wooden eye. Pintel yanks the fork out, and the eye comes with it. Jack finds Gibbs's flask at his feet and discovers that it's empty, much to his disappointment. But he then notices the lock of his cell has been blown away, much to his delight. On the interceptor, the crew uses the gunwales as cover from the pirates' small arms fire.
We could use a few more ideas, lass.
Your turn!
We need us a devil's dowry.
We'll give him her.
She's not what they're after.
Elizabeth puts her hand to her neck and realizes.
The medallion.
Well, sprints for the forward hatch and drops inside, landing in a foot of rising water. He searches frantically as the skirmish continues.
Strike our colours, you bloomin' cockroaches! Hands! Grapnels at the ready! Prepare to board!
As Will searches, a chain shot is fired from the Pearl and smashes through the mast of the Interceptor. The beam crashes down, pinning the forward hatch of the Interceptor shut, while at the far end lands on the deck of the Black Pearl next to Barbossa, who doesn't flinch.
Pistols and cutlasses, men! Colour and Twigg to the powder magazine! And the rest of you, bring me that medallion!
The monkey scampers across the fallen mast while pirates swarm over, jumping from deck to deck and swinging over on grappling hooks from the rigging. Will struggles to get out of the hull while water continues rising around him. Collar and Twigg descend to the Interceptor's magazine and pour a fuse from a keg of gunpowder. Meanwhile, a pirate who attempts swinging over to the Interceptor misses his landing and swings back to the Black Pearl. Jack catches the rope, and the pirate continues his swing, now ropeless.
Thanks very much.
Jack swings out and collides with the pirate bearing down on Gibbs, sending him flying. Jack then lands on the deck and hands Gibbs his flask.
Jack!
Bloody empty.
Beneath the deck, Will is still struggling. He hears a screech and looks up to see the monkey holding the medallion. It then slips out through a hole in the bulkhead. Above, a pirate is about to strike Elizabeth when his arm stops. He turns to see Jack holding it.
That's not very nice.
Elizabeth strikes the pirate with the butt of her musket, sending him overboard. Jack then grabs her by the shoulders.
Where's the medallion?
Wretch!
She swings to slap him, but Jack catches her wrist. His eyes flick to the bandage on her hand.
Ah, where's dear William?
Elizabeth realizes he hasn't returned. She sees the forward hatch pinned by the mast and darts toward it.
Will!
Elizabeth!
Jack almost follows, but sees.
Monkey!
He chases the small animal as Elizabeth tries to open the hatch.
I can't move it!
She's grabbed by two pirates and dragged away.
Will!
Elizabeth!
The water is up to Will's neck now. Above, the monkey dashes across the broken mast, still clutching the medallion. Jack scrambles across after it, reaches out as it gets to the pearl, but someone else grabs it first. He looks up to see Barbossa with the medallion in his hand and the monkey on his shoulder.
Well, thank you, Jack.
You're welcome.
Not you. We named the monkey Jack. Gents, our hope is restored!
As the water fills the last of the Interceptor's hull, Will takes a breath and submerges. At the magazine, Twigg ignites the gunpowder fuse. A few minutes later on the Black Pearl, Jack's crew and Elizabeth are tied to the mast by Ragetti. Pintel eyes them, pistol drawn.
Any of you so much as thinks the word parlay, and I'll have your guts for garters.
Barbossa holds the medallion in his hand and watches as the Interceptor explodes.
Will!
Elizabeth twists free of the rope and rushes Barbossa, but he grabs her by the wrists.
You godless savage!
Welcome back, miss. You took advantage of our hospitality last time. It holds fair now you return the favor.
He tosses Elizabeth toward his crew, who begins grabbing her from every direction. Suddenly, Will, soaking wet, appears standing on the rail of the Pearl. He jumps down, grabs a pistol, and points it at Barbossa.
Barbossa! She goes free.
What's in your head, boy?
She goes free.
You've only got one shot, and we can't die.
Don't do anything stupid.
You can't. I can.
Will puts the muzzle under his chin.
Like that.
Who are you?
No one. He's no one. A distant cousin of my aunt's nephew, twice removed. Lovely singing voice, though. Eunuch.
My name is Will Turner. My father was Bootstrap Bill Turner. His blood runs in my veins.
Here's the spitting image of old Bootstrap Bill come back to haunt us.
On my word, do as I say, or I'll pull this trigger and be lost to Davy Jones' locker.
Name your terms, Mr. Turner.
Elizabeth goes free.
Yes, we know that one. Anything else?
Jack gestures to himself.
And the crew. The crew are not to be harmed.
Jack slumps. Barbossa smiles and steps toward Will.
Agreed.
Later that day, The Black Pearl lies at anchor near the small island. Elizabeth is prodded to the edge of the plank, and Jack is next in line.
Barbosa, you lying bastard! You swore she'd go free!
Don't dare impede me on her, boy! I agreed she'd go free, but it was you who failed to specify when nor where.
The pirate gags Will as Barbosa turns to Elizabeth.
Though it does seem a shame to lose something so fine, don't it, lads? So, I'll be having that dress back before you go.
She hesitates, then strips it off, leaving her in a silk slip. She throws the dress at Barbosa.
It goes with your black heart.
Ooh, it's still warm.
Barbosa tosses the dress to a crew member, then watches Elizabeth move stoically out to the end of the plank.
Too long.
The bosun stomps on the board, causing it to shake. Elizabeth loses her balance and falls off the other end, plunging into the sea. The pirates laugh, and so does Jack, but his laugh is cut off as he's lifted onto the plank.
I'd really rather hoped we were all past this.
Jack, did you not notice? Well, that'd be the same little island that we made you governor of on our last little trip.
I did notice.
Perhaps you'll be able to conjure up another miraculous escape, but I doubt it.
He draws his sword.
Off you go.
Last time you left me with a pistol. With one shot.
By the powers, you're right. Where be Jack's pistol? Bring it forward.
A pirate hands Jack's pistol to Barbosa.
Seeing as there's two of us, a gentleman would give us a pair of pistols.
It'll be one pistol, as before. And you could be the gentleman and shoot the lady, and starve to death yourself.
Barbosa tosses the pistol overboard, and Jack immediately dives in after it. He's able to grab the gun and then swim ashore along with Elizabeth. They trudge onto the beach, and Jack looks back out to sea, watching the Black Pearl, under full sail but listing badly to one side, moving away from him.
That's the second time I've had to watch that man sail away with my ship.
Jack moves toward a clump of palm trees, and Elizabeth follows.
But you were marooned on this island before, weren't you? So we can escape in the same way you did then.
To what point and purpose, young missy? The Black Pearl is gone, and unless you have a rudder and a lot of sails hidden in that bodice. Unlikely. Young Mr. Turner will be dead long before you can reach him.
Jack spots a tree and walks up to it, then takes measured paces away from it.
But you're Captain Jack Sparrow. You vanished from under the eyes of 7 agents of the East India Company. You sacked Nassau Port without even firing a shot. Are you the pirate I've read about or not?
Jack stops at a sandy spot in the ground. He bounces up and down a few times, and the sand under him shifts slightly.
How did you escape last time?
Last time? I was here a grand total of 3 days, all right?
Jack reaches down and heaves a trapdoor, revealing a pit. Inside are barrels and bottles of rum, all covered with dust and cobwebs.
Last time, the rum runners who used this island as a cache came by, and I was able to barter passage off. From the looks of things, they've long been out of business. Probably have your bloody friend Norrington to thank for that.
He grabs some bottles and heads back past Elizabeth for the beach.
So that's it then. That's the secret grand adventure of the infamous Jack Sparrow. You spent 3 days lying on the beach drinking rum.
Welcome to the Caribbean, love.
He hands her a bottle and pushes past her. Elizabeth looks at the rum for a moment, and later that night the two are roaring drunk, arm in arm, singing around a blazing campfire on the beach.
We're
We're
devils,
devils
we're
and
black
black
sheep,
sheep,
we're
we're
really
really bad
bad
eggs.
Drink
Drink
up,
up, me hearty,
me
yo
hearty,
ho!
yo-ho!
Yo ho, yo ho!
A pirate's life for me.
I love this song. Really bad eggs.
Jack stumbles and falls into the sand. Elizabeth falls next to him.
When I get the pearl back, I'm going to teach it to the whole crew. And we'll sing it all the time.
And you'll be positively the most fearsome pirate in the Spanish Main.
Not just the Spanish Main, love. The entire ocean. The entire world. Wherever we want to go, we go. That's what a ship is, you know. It's not just a keel and a hull and a dock and sails. That's what a ship needs. But what a ship is, what the Black Pearl really is freedom.
Jack, it must be really terrible for you to be trapped on this island.
Elizabeth leans into Jack, who gives her a surprised look, but then puts his arm around her shoulders.
Ah, yes, but the company is infinitely better than last time, and the scenery has definitely improved.
Mr. Sparrow, I'm not entirely sure I've had enough rum to allow that kind of talk.
I know exactly what you mean, love.
Jack spruces himself up with a twist of his moustache. Elizabeth raises her bottle.
To freedom.
To the Black Pearl.
They tap bottles, and Elizabeth feigns a drink as Jack chugs. He falls backward, and the next thing he knows, it's morning, and he smells smoke. His eyes snap open, and he stands up to see the casks from the pit, as well as the palm trees around them ablaze. Smoke rises into the sky as Elizabeth tosses another keg on the fire.
No! Not good! Stop! Not good! What are you doing? You burned all the food, the shade, the rum!
Yes, the rum is gone.
Why's the rum gone?
1, because it is a vile drink that turns even the most respectable men into complete scoundrels. 2,
She glances up to the smoke-filled sky.
that signal is over 1,000 feet high. The entire Royal Navy is out looking for me. Do you really think that there's even the slightest chance that they won't see it?
But why is the rum gone?
Just wait, Captain Sparrow. You give it 1 hour, maybe 2, keep a weather eye open, and you will see white sails on that horizon.
She sits down and stares at the sea. Jack pulls out his pistol and fights the urge to point it at Elizabeth before holstering it again and stalking up the beach.
Must have been terrible for you to be trapped here, Jack. Must have been terrible for you. Well, it bloody is now!
At the crest of a dune, Jack stops and stares, incredulous. Anchored nearby, white sails glorious against turquoise waters, is the Dauntless, and the longboat is already halfway to the island.
There'll be no living with her after this.
Soon enough, Elizabeth is talking with her father aboard the Dauntless. Norrington is nearby along with Gillette, Murtogg and Mullroy, who stand around Jack.
But we've got to save Will!
No, you're safe now. We will return to Port Royal immediately, not go gallivanting after pirates.
Then we condemn him to death.
The boy's fate is regrettable, but then so is his decision to engage in piracy.
To rescue me, to prevent anything from happening to me.
If I may be so bold as to inject my professional opinion, the Pearl was listing near to scuppers after the battle. It's very unlikely she'll be able to make good time. Think about it. The Black Pearl. The last real pirate threat in the Caribbean, mate. How can you pass that up, right?
By remembering that I serve others, Mr. Sparrow, not only myself.
Commodore, I beg you, please do this. For me. As a wedding gift.
Accepting the Commodore's proposal?
I am.
A wedding! I love weddings. Drinks all around!
Norrington glares at Jack.
I know. Clap him in irons, right?
Mr. Sparrow, you will accompany these fine men to the helm and provide us with a bearing to the Isla de Muerta. You will then spend the rest of the voyage contemplating all possible meanings of the phrase silent as the grave. Do I make myself clear?
Inescapably clear.
Pintel and Ragetti mop tar onto the interior of the Black Pearl's hull. Jack's crew are crowded into one of the now repaired brig cells.
Shiver me timbers. Parrot
Master.
noises go here because Discord says no.
Master Gibbs.
Cotton here says you missed a bit.
Pintel slaps them up against the cell. Gibbs takes the hint. Will is alone in the other cell, watching the pirates. He calls out to Pintel.
You knew William Turner?
Oh, Bootstrap Bill. We knew him. Never start well with Bootstrap, what we did to Jack Sparrow. The mutiny and all. He said it wasn't right with the code. That's why he sent off a piece of treasure to you, as were. He said we deserved to be cursed, and remain cursed.
stupid blighter.
Good man.
Well, as you can imagine, that didn't sit too well with the captain.
That didn't sit too well with the captain at all. Tell him what Barbossa did.
I'm telling the story. So, what the captain did, he strapped the cannon to bootstraps.
Bootstraps, bootstraps.
And as we saw of old Bill Turner, he was sinking to the crushing black oblivion of Daisy Jones' locker. Of course, it was only after that we learned we needed his blood to lift the curse.
That's what you call ironic?
The pair glance at each other and laugh until they hear footsteps behind them. Barbossa, flanked by several other pirates, throw the keys to Ragetti.
Bring him.
That night, Norrington looks at the empty black pearl anchored at the lagoon of Isla de Muerta through a spyglass. He and Jack share a longboat along with other soldiers. Commodore.
My apologies.
Don't worry about it. I don't think you care for the situation.
Let's see. I seem to have lost my place. Give me one moment.
That terrible moment when you're telling a story and the voices in your head aren't working with you. I mean, what?
Could the gracious narrator perhaps provide me with the page number?
The document I have might not be the right one. Could one of the other voices in my head be so kind?
Looking at number 81, if my voice decides to transmit for once.
82. For me.
Oh.
I don't care for the situation. Any attempt to storm the cave could turn into an ambush.
Not if you're the one doing the ambushing. I go in, I convince Barbossa to send his men out with their little boats. You and your mates return to the Dauntless and blast the bejesus out of them with your little cannons, eh? What do you have to lose?
Nothing I'd lament being rid of.
Now, to be quite honest with you, there's still a slight risk to those aboard the Dauntless, which includes the future Mrs. Commodore.
Norrington considers this for a moment, and soon after, Elizabeth is struggling as she's hauled into the Dauntless's cabin by Gillette and two other Marines.
Sorry, but it's for your own safety.
I don't care what the Commodore ordered. I have to tell him. The pirates, they're cursed. They can't be killed.
Oh, don't worry, miss. He's already informed of that. A little mermaid flopped up on deck and told him the whole story.
Snickering with the Marines, he shuts the door.
This is Jack Sparrow's doing.
Jack smiles as he rows the small boat away from the Dauntless. Meanwhile, Barbossa tosses an apple to himself as he leads the crew through the island cave. Will, hands bound behind his back, is shoved along.
No reason to fret. Just a prick of the finger, a few drops of blood.
No mistakes this time. He's only half Turner. We spill it all.
Oh, I guess there is reason to fret.
In the centre of the cavern, Will is shoved to his knees in front of the stone chest by Koehler and Twigg. Koehler pushes Will's head forward directly over the chest, the medallion hanging below his throat. Barbossa takes the stone knife from atop the gold while Jack pushes his way through the crowd of cheering pirates.
Excuse me. Pardon me. Beg pardon.
Begone by blood. By blood.
Jack emerges from the crowd and Barbossa stares at him in disbelief.
Jack!
It's not possible.
Not probable.
Where's Elizabeth?
She's safe, just like I promised. She's all set to marry Norrington, just like she promised. And you get to die for her, just like you promised. So we're all men of our word, really. Except for Elizabeth, who is in fact a woman.
Shut up. You're next.
Barbossa puts the knife to Will's throat.
You don't want to be doing that, mate.
No, I really think I do.
Your funeral.
Barbossa is about to slit Will's throat, but rolls his eyes and turns toward Jack again.
Why don't I want to be doing it?
Because the HMS Dauntless, pride of the Royal Navy, is floating just offshore waiting for you.
The pirates murmur to themselves. Outside, longboats full of marines are indeed positioned on either side of the cave mouth. Murtogg and Mullroy are in Norrington's boat, directly behind him.
What are we doing here?
The pirates come out, unprepared, unawares. We catch 'em in a crossfire and send 'em down to Sea Ol' Hub.
I know why we're here. I just meant why we're doing what Mr. Sparrow said we should do, with the cannons and all.
Because it was Mr. Sparrow who said it.
You think he wasn't telling the truth?
In the island cave, Jack is allowed to step atop the mountain of treasure and approach Barbossa.
Just hear me out, mate. You order your men to row out to the Dauntless. They do what they do best. Robert's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt. There you are with 2 ships, the makings of your very own fleet. Of course, you'll take the grandest as your flagship, and who's to argue? What of the Pearl? Name me captain, I'll sail under your colours. I'll give you 10% of my plunder, and you get to introduce yourself as Commodore Barbossa. Savvy?
And I suppose in exchange you want me not to kill the whelp?
No, not at all. By all means, kill the whelp. Just not yet. Wait to lift the curse, until the opportune moment, for instance.
Jack scoops up some of the Aztec coins.
After you've killed Norrington's men.
He drops the coins back into the stone chest one by one, punctuating his words.
Every last one.
It's only Will who sees Jack palm one of the coins.
You've been planning this from the beginning, ever since you learned my name.
Yeah.
I want 50% of your plunder.
15.
40.
25. And I'll buy you the hat. A really big one, Commodore.
We have an accord.
He and Jack shake hands, and then Jack turns toward the pirates in grand fashion.
All hands, to the boats!
Barbossa shoots him a glare.
Apologies, you give the orders.
Gents, take a walk.
The pirates laugh darkly and begin filing out to the cavern.
Not to the boats.
Pirates move toward the boats, then past them. Pintel and Ragetti are among them, but are stopped when the bosun slaps a parasol across their chests and gives them a smile. Outside, the moon appears from behind the clouds, illuminating still water around the mouth of the cave. At least, the surface of the water is still. But beneath the water, a school of fish scatters. The pirates, skeletal from the moonlight shining through the water, plod through across the ocean floor. As they move into the shadow of the Dauntless, they regain their skin but remain unfazed by the water they breathe. They continue to the other side, becoming skeletal once more as they approach the ship's anchors. Above the surface, gentle splashing echoes from the mouth of the cave. The Marines raise their rifles as a boat emerges, but they hesitate. In the boat are 2 people wearing elegant dresses, their faces blocked by frilly parasols that shade them from the moon. Norrington signals his men.
Hold fire.
It is, of course, Pintel and Ragetti in drag. They continue rowing past the line of longboats toward the Dauntless. Ragetti fans himself with a smile.
This is just like what the Greeks done at Troy, except they was in a horse instead of dresses. Wooden horse.
Twigg silently breaks the surface, climbing the rope connecting the ship to its anchor. Others follow behind him. On the ship's deck, Governor Swann approaches the cabin door and nods to the guards stationed there.
A moment, please.
The guard departs and Swann knocks lightly on the door.
Elizabeth?
He waits for an answer. None comes.
I just want you to know, I believe you've made a very good decision today. Couldn't be more proud of you. But, even a good decision, if made for the wrong reasons, can be a wrong decision.
Elizabeth stands at the stern window, her back to the door. Outside, Twigg peeks over the rail onto the deck of the Dauntless. A few lone sentries patrol. On the other side of the ship, a crewman beckons Gillette and gestures toward the water.
Tenet?
Gillette looks through a telescope and sees the longboat with Pintel and Ragetti rowing toward them. Ragetti waves.
Yoo-hoo!
With the sailors distracted, Twigg and the other pirates climb onto the deck of the Dauntless. Governor Swann continues attempting to talk with his daughter.
Elizabeth? Are you there? Elizabeth, are you even listening to me?
She is not. He enters the cabin and finds it empty. Several knotted bed sheets hang from the cabin window. Below, Elizabeth rows a small boat away from the Dauntless. On the deck, Koehler sneaks up behind the sentry and slits his throat. The bosun strangles another sentry, and he falls to the deck. The pirates advance towards the stern of the ship. Inside the captain's cabin, Governor Swann looks out the window.
Oh, what have you done?
Pintel and Ragetti continue approaching the Dauntless, parasols still up.
Yoo-hoo!
Stop that! I already feel like a fool.
Look nice, though.
Pintel drops his parasol and throttles Ragetti, who also drops his parasol, and the two are revealed as skeletons.
I look nice!
They look up at Gillette, realizing they've blown their cover. Pintel grabs his pistol and fires at the lieutenant, but only hits his hat. Gillette turns to recover it and sees the horde, mere feet away, climbing up the stairs from the deck and dropping down from the rigging like spiders. Swords clash, pistols are fired as an all-out fight erupts. Swann, despondent, exits the cabin, sees the melee of marines and skeletal pirates, and promptly retreats back into the cabin. One of the pirates is alerted by the sound of the door shutting, but doesn't recognize the sound of the door among the chaos. He looks around for a moment, then decides it must have been a pistol shot, and attacks another sailor. Back in the cavern, Jack examines one of the many relics among the piles of treasure while Barbosa sits near the Aztec chest. 3 other pirates have stayed behind with them. One stands near Will, whose hands are still bound.
I must admit, Jack, I thought I had you figured. But turns out you're a hard man to predict.
Me? I'm dishonest. And a dishonest man you can always trust to be dishonest. Honestly, it's the honest ones you want to watch out for. Because you can never predict when they're going to do something incredibly stupid.
Jack pulls a sword from one of the pirate's scabbards, kicks him to the water, and throws the sword to Will, who knocks the bosun into the water as well. Jack and Barbosa each draw their swords, and the two square off. One of the other pirates slashes at Will, who turns and parries so the blade cuts the rope binding his hands. The other 2 pirates attack him, but he fights back, holding off the 3 enemies while Jack and Barbosa begin dueling furiously.
You're off the edge of the map, mate. Here there be monsters.
Elizabeth pulls her rowboat up to the Black Pearl and climbs up the side. As she passes the gun port, she sees 2 pirates sitting out a feast.
What would you like to eat first? I think we should decide now so we're ready when the time comes.
Elizabeth continues her way up and begins sneaking across the deck. Suddenly, the skeletal monkey drops down and screeches at her. Elizabeth is slightly startled, but doesn't scream. Down below, the 2 pirates are focused on their mock feast, but look up when they hear the monkey drop onto the exposed cannon with a clang.
What was that?
They turn and look out the gun port, see the dazed monkey sitting on the cannon as it slips off the side and plummets to the water below. Elizabeth looks down over the gunwale as the pirates stick their heads out the gun port, looking down at the splash, then up. But she's gone. The pirates draw back in and give chase. Elizabeth races down to the gangway and hides just before the pirates race up the gun deck and go past, heading for the top deck. In the brig, Jack's crew sits around. Gibbs tilts his head as he hears footsteps.
Shh!
He turns to see someone running down the stairs.
It's Elizabeth.
Pintel and Ragetti climb onto the ship through a gun port while the skirmish continues on deck. The The wounded crewman drags himself to the ship's bell and rings it. On the longboats, Norrington's eyes go wide as he hears the sound.
Make for the ship! Move!
A pirate runs his sword through the crewman ringing the bell, but Norrington and his men are already rowing toward the Dauntless. On the gun deck, Pintel, Ragetti, and other pirates fire a cannon, blowing one of the longboats near Norrington out of the water. On the deck, a pirate glances through the cabin's captain window and spots the governor. Skeletal hands smash through the windows, reaching for him. One of them grabs Swann's wig, but Swann refuses to let it go and has a tug of war over it. Swann grabs a bullhorn from the table behind him and whacks the skeleton arm, which breaks off its owner and falls to the floor. In the cave, Barbossa and Jack continue their sword fight. Eventually, Barbossa drives Jack to the ground, drops his sword, and spreads his arms.
You can't beat me, Jack.
Jack thrusts his sword into Barbossa, who makes no attempt to evade the attack. Barbossa looks down at the blade impaling him with a bored expression. He looks up, sighs, and then removes the sword and drives it into Jack's chest. Jack makes a choking sound and looks down from the weapon to Barbossa in shock as he staggers backward into a beam of moonlight where he becomes skeletal.
That's interesting.
Jack examines one of his hands. On the other side of the cave, Will finishes off a pirate and turns to see Jack, who flips an Aztec coin through his bony fingers.
I can't resist, mate.
Jack pulls the sword out of his chest as Barbossa throws some coins at him and takes up his own blade again. The two step in and out of moonlight as they move across the cavern in pitched battle. Will is forced to turn away from one of the pirates as they assail him again. Outside, the Dauntless's cannons continue to fire on Norrington and his men. In the captain's cabin, the disembodied arm crawls toward Governor Swann, who scrambles away in horror and attempts to swat at it with a rolled-up map. When the limb refuses to stay still, he picks it up, wrestles with it for a moment, then shoves it in a desk drawer. He backs up against the desk as it rattles. In the cave, Will continues his battle now against two pirates. He dodges a thrust from one, which ends up getting stuck in the other. The second attempts an attack, but ends up hitting the first. The pirates look at each other a moment, then remove the swords from their chests and chase after Will. Meanwhile, Jack and Barbossa continue their struggle.
So what now, Jack Sparrow? Are we to be two immortals locked in an epic battle till Judgment Day and trumpets sound?
Or it could surrender.
Not likely. They resume, their swords clashing rapidly as they each display their considerable skill. Finding an opening, Barbossa punches Jack across the jaw. Jack flees while Barbossa pursues him at a leisurely pace.
Ah! Ha 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 ha!
On the Pearl, the two pirates searching for Elizabeth sneak along. The pirates whirl at the sound just as boom! They're hit by a longboat swinging across the deck on ropes and swept off into the water. Gibbs, Anamaria, Cotton, Elizabeth, and the rest of the crew cheer. The Black Pearl is theirs. Elizabeth grabs the gunwale of the longboat.
All of you with me. Will is in that cave and we must save him. Ready? And heave!
But the boat doesn't budge. She's the only one pulling. She turns. The crew is looking at her, not moving.
Please, I need your help. Come on.
A storm. I report in a storm.
Button's right. We've got the pearl.
And what about Jack? Are you just going to leave him?
Jack goes as a ship.
And there's the code to consider.
The code. You're pirates. Hang the code and hang the rules. They're more like guidelines anyway.
Gibbs looks away. A few minutes later, Elizabeth is alone in a rowboat, and the Pearl behind her, sailing away.
Bloody pirates.
The fight aboard the Dauntless continues. Pintel and Ragetti make their way onto the deck, killing as they go. Ragetti's good eye notices the Black Pearl moving past them.
Oi, is it supposed to be doing that?
They're stealing our ship!
Bloody pirates!
Norrington's boats arrive at the Dauntless.
Boarders away!
He and his men climb up the side and the battle rages renewed. Norrington shoots Koehler, but he keeps coming.
Come on!
Gillette stands on a railing and swings a large block and tackle across the deck at the bosun, but the pirate sees it, ducks, and then takes off after Gillette. The block and tackle swings back and hits Ragetti in the head, knocking his wooden eye out of its socket.
My eye!
He chases it across the deck. Murtogg and Mullroy finally make it up to the railing of the ship and see the fighting. They shake hands, then climb onto the deck, letting out a battle scream, or at least the best battle scream that any British soldier can. In the cave, a pirate throws a small bomb at Will, which explodes and sends treasure flying everywhere. Jack and Barbossa react to the explosion, then continue their fight. Will is thrown to the ground and loses his sword. The pirates laugh and stand over him.
I'm going to teach you the meaning of pain.
You like pain?
He turns just in time to be hit in the face by a long gaff.
Try wearing a corset.
Elizabeth looks at Will, smiles, and helps him up. She then turns and notices Jack, skeletal, dueling with Barbossa.
Whose side is Jack on?
At the moment,
Will shrugs. Elizabeth nods, and they rush the three pirates who haven't recovered yet again. They thrust the gaff through the chests of the three pirates, skewering them together as they stand in the moonlight. Will then grabs a bomb from one of the pirates, sparks the fuse, and shoves it into the ribcage of the center pirate on the gaff before pushing all three out of the moonlight. The pirate clutches his now flesh chest, smoke coming out of his mouth.
Fair?
Will grabs Elizabeth and runs toward the massive pile of treasure as the bomb explodes, and the remains of the three pirates fly through the air. The sound is enough to make Jack and Barbossa, out of the moonlight for the moment, pause their battle. Barbossa, frustrated beyond measure, looks at the scene at the source of the sound, and Jack takes the moment to press the coin he stole into his palm and then slices his hand with his own sword, smearing it with blood, before tossing it over Barbossa to Will. In response, Barbossa pulls out his pistol and turns his head toward Elizabeth, aiming at her. Bang! Elizabeth looks surprised. So does Barbossa. He turns to Jack in confusion and disbelief. Jack, whose pistol is still raised, has shot him.
10 years you carry that pistol, and now you waste your shot.
he didn't waste it.
Barbossa turns and sees Will standing at the top of the treasure pile with a bloody knife in his right hand and his left hand in a fist over the Aztec chest. He opens the fist, and both his medallion and the coin Jack stole fall, revealing the cut in Will's palm. The two bloody pieces of gold land in the chest with their counterparts. Barbossa drops his sword, opens his jacket, and looks down to his chest. Blood blossoms on his shirt around the bullet hole. He stares at the crimson stain for a moment before looking up at Jack. Barbossa cracks a slight smile, his face a mixture of amazement, amusement, fear, and relief.
I feel cold.
Captain Barbossa falls backward onto the treasure pile and loses the grip on the apple he had held in his hand, finally dead. On the Dauntless, Norrington pierces Koehler with his sword. The pirates all go silent as they realize they're flesh. Koehler, wounded and bleeding, manages to make a strained noise before he collapses. In the captain's cabin, the desk no longer rattles. Governor Swann opens the drawer and makes a sickened expression as he looks inside. On the deck, Twigg sees Koehler fall and looks at Norrington, and then up at the full moon. One by one, the pirates drop their weapons. Ragetti finally manages to grab his eyeball and puts it back in. He stands and looks at Pintel, who has his hands raised in the air. Ragetti then turns and realizes they're looking down the barrels of guns held by Murtogg and Mullroy. Pintel grins sheepishly.
Parlay?
The ship is ours, gentlemen.
The soldiers and sailors cheer. Governor Swann comes out to the cabin, joining the cheers and mocking the pirates. Inside the cave, Will moves to Elizabeth. Their eyes meet, and what would have been a romantic moment is interrupted by the sound of a crash. They turn to see Jack picking through the treasure, tossing aside objects that don't catch his eye.
We should return to the Dauntless.
Your fiancé will be wanting to know you're safe.
Elizabeth gives him a pained expression, nods, then leaves the cave. Jack, holding and wearing a lot of treasure, nonchalantly strolls up beside Will.
If you were waiting for the opportune moment, that was it. Now, if you'd be so kind, I'd be much obliged if you would drop me off at my ship.
Unfortunately for Jack, the Black Pearl is gone. He begrudgingly joins Will and Elizabeth in the rowboat as they return to the Dauntless.
I'm sorry, Jack.
They done what's right by them. Can't expect more than that.
The next day, the sound of drums rings through Fort Charles. Jack stands, hands bound, on a gallows in front of a noose. A nearby official opens a scroll and begins reading to the assembled crowd, which includes Commodore Norrington, Governor Swann, and Elizabeth.
Jack Sparrow, be it known that you have been charged, tried, and convicted.
Captain Jack Sparrow.
For your willful commission of crime against the crown, said crimes being numerous in quantity and sinister in nature. The most egregious of these is to be cited herewith: piracy, smuggling.
Will quietly makes his way through the crowd, glancing around.
This is wrong.
Commodore Norrington is bound by the law, as are we all.
Falsification of letters of marque and reprisal, impersonating an officer of the British Royal Navy, impersonating an officer of the Spanish Royal Navy, impersonating a cleric of the Church of England.
Jack smiles at that accusation.
Sailing under false colors, arson, kidnapping, looting, poaching, brigandage, pilfering, depravity, depredation, and general lawlessness.
Will spots Cotton's Parrot landing on a flagpole held by Murtogg. Murtogg reacts as the bird soils his coat.
And for these crimes, you have been sentenced on this day to be hung by neck until dead. May God have mercy on your soul.
Will's route takes him past Swann, Norrington, and Elizabeth. He pauses and nods to them.
Governor Swann? Commodore? Elizabeth?
She looks at him, expressionless.
I should have told you every day from the moment I met you. I love you.
Swann and Norrington look to a stunned Elizabeth. Without another word, Will pushes through the crowd toward the gallows as the noose is put around Jack's neck and the drum roll is played. Elizabeth spots Cotton's Parrot as it flies away. Will begins pushing through the crowd more aggressively, and Norrington notices.
Marines!
I can't breathe.
Elizabeth staggers and faints. Norrington turns around as he hears her fall.
Elizabeth, darling!
Will draws his sword as the executioner grabs the release lever of the gallows.
Move!
Swann fans Elizabeth and she bolts upright as the drum roll ends. The executioner pulls the lever, the trapdoor opens, Jack drops, Will throws his sword, thunk. Jack's fall is halted after just a few inches when his feet land on the blade of Will's sword, embedded on the open trapdoor.
Or?
And then Governor Swann understands. Will races up the steps to the gallows as Norrington moves through the crowd, flanked by Marines. Jack balances precariously on the sword as the executioner and Will fight, axe versus sword. Will's spare blade is knocked away, but he ducks under another swing that inadvertently cuts Jack's rope, allowing him to drop to the ground unharmed. Will knocks the executioner off the gallows platform and onto Norrington and his men. Jack uses the sword stuck in the trapdoor to slit the rope bind in his hands and then races away from the gallows with Will. Jack pulls the noose off his head, tosses one side of the rope to Will, and they use it to trip a group of Marines and then clotheslines another into a pillar. They make it to the edge of the courtyard before they are surrounded and rifles are brought to bear on them. Norrington strides up, followed by Elizabeth and Governor Swann.
I thought we might have to endure some ill-conceived manner of escape attempt.
He looks to Will.
But not from you.
On our way to Port Royal, I granted you clemency, and this is how you thank me, by throwing your lot in with him. He's a pirate!
And a good man. If all I have achieved here is that the hangman will earn 2 pairs of boots instead of 1, so be it. At least my conscience will be clear.
You forget your place, Turner.
It's right here, between you and Jack.
As is mine.
Elizabeth steps beside Will and links her hand in his. Her father looks surprised. Norrington looks crushed.
Elizabeth, lower your weapons. For goodness sake, put them down!
The Marines comply.
So, this is where your heart truly lies, then?
It is.
Jack spots Cotton's Parrot and smiles as he walks up to Governor Swann.
Well, I'm actually feeling rather good about this. I think we've all arrived at a very special place, eh? Spiritually, ecumenically, grammatically.
He looks to Norrington.
I want you to know that I was rooting for you, mate. Know that. Elizabeth, it would never have worked between us, darling. I'm sorry. Will? Nice hat.
Jack springs up to the steps and up on the parapet wall.
Friends, this is the day you will always remember as the day that you...
Jack slips and falls backward over the parapet and plunges into the water below. Everyone rushes over to the wall as Jack surfaces.
Idiot. He's nowhere to go but back to the noose.
Sail ho!
Moving into the harbour, sails full, is the Black Pearl. Jack smiles at the sight and begins swimming toward it. Above, Gillette looks to Norrington.
What's your plan of action? Sir?
Norrington does not respond, still in disbelief and dealing with the ramifications of the last few minutes.
So on the rare occasion pursuing the right course demands an act of piracy. Piracy itself can be the right course.
Norrington looks at him and gives a small nod.
Mr. Turner.
Will starts toward him, but Elizabeth grabs his arm.
I will accept the consequences of my actions.
She releases him, and he moves to Norrington, who holds up his ceremonial blade.
This is a beautiful sword. I would expect the man who made it to show the same care and devotion in every aspect of his life.
The two men regard each other with unspoken understanding.
Thank you.
Norrington nods, lowers his sword, and starts down the stairs. Commodore, what about Sparrow?
Oh, I think we can afford to give him 1 day's head start.
Gillette is baffled, but leaves Commodore Norrington and the other Marines. Only Governor Swann remains as Elizabeth and Will lock eyes and move into each other's arms.
So, this is the path you've accepted, is it? After all, he is a blacksmith.
No. He's a pirate.
Swann smiles and gives them their privacy. Finally alone, Will leans in and kisses Elizabeth. It's a kiss that makes up for everything ever held back between them. Out at sea, Cotton, high atop the aft mast, throws a line into the water for Jack.
Heave!
Jack is hoisted out of the water and onto the deck of the Black Pearl. Gibbs approaches him with a smile.
Thought you were supposed to keep to the code.
We figured they were more actual guidelines.
Gibbs helps Jack to his feet and Cotton hands him his hat.
Thank you.
Captain Sparrow.
Anamaria steps away from the ship's helm and drapes Jack's coat over his shoulders.
The Black Pearl is yours.
Jack moves to the helm and runs a hand lovingly over the wheel. Suddenly, he feels the eyes of the crew on him.
On deck, you scabrous dogs! Hands to braces! Let go and hold to run free!
The crew scatters, obeying his commands, leaving Jack to muse to himself.
Now, bring me that horizon.
He opens his compass, takes a reading, and adjusts the course.
And really bad eggs. Drink up me hearties, yo-ho!
Well, that's all I've got for ye today, lads. About time you should be getting back to work anyway. But worry not. This isn't the end of Captain Jack Sparrow's story. After all, he has a debt coming due, and I plan to collect. I wonder, Captain Jack Sparrow, do you fear death? Thank you for listening to our radio drama presentation of Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl. Jack Sparrow was played by Emmy Lowe. Elizabeth Swann was played by Frangie. Will Turner was played by Hayes Converse. Captain Barbossa was played by Cam Griffin. Mr. Gibbs was played by Sean Robert. Commodore Norrington, Mallot, and Prisoner 2 were played by Taylor Starnes, who has dedicated her performance today to the memory of DFW radio icon Russ Martin. Governor Swann, the Bosun, Twigg, Officer, Harbormaster, Parrot, Jacoby, Grapple, Giselle, and the Crewman were played by Kailey Reyes. Pintel, Murtogg, Estrella, Gillette, Soldier 1, and Mr. Brown were played by Celeste English. Ragetti, Mullroy, Anamaria, Official, Prisoner 1, Koehler, Soldier 2, and the Steersman were played by Mary Rivette. The narrator, Davy Jones, was written and performed by me, Joel Guttman. Audio engineering was provided by John H. Baker. We are pleased to announce that in March, Digital Era Entertainment will be celebrating the 11th anniversary of their debut production Dogenopolis' finale with a special radio drama presentation of The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya's Endless 8. The performance will feature an 8-person cast who will rotate roles in each iteration. The exact date will be announced on Digital Era Entertainment's social media accounts in the coming weeks. Our next regularly scheduled radio drama performance will be on Saturday, March 27th, when we perform Ghostbusters. Both performances will begin at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. For more nerdy content, please follow Digital Era Entertainment here on Twitch, and you can listen to our past radio drama performances on Digital Era Entertainment's YouTube channel. Once again, thank you for tuning in, and we hope you'll join us again next time. Arr.
Please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and follow us across social media for updates. Thanks for watching!